The ringing sliced through my dreamless sleep like a physical blow. I jolted upright, heart hammering against my ribs, disorientation washing over me in a cold wave. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, squinting against the harsh blue light. 3 a.m. The screen displayed a name that usually brought a knot of anxiety to my stomach, but at this hour, it brought only terror. Mom. Hello? My voice was thick with sleep, trembling slightly. Morgan! Oh God, Morgan, you have to help! My mother's voice was a shriek, hysterical and piercing. Behind her, I could hear chaotic background noise, beeping monitors, hushed voices, the distinct, sterile hum of a crisis. Mom, what's wrong? Is it Dad? It's Tyler, she sobbed, the name tearing out of her throat. Oh God, Morgan, there was an accident, a horrible accident. He's at the hospital. His brain, there's swelling. They need to operate right now. The air left my lungs. My little brother, Tyler. What happened? I asked, swinging my legs out of bed, my feet hitting the cold hardwood floor. My mind was already racing, calculating how fast I could get to the airport, how many leave days I had accrued at the firm. He fell, she cried, down a flight of concrete stairs. But that doesn't matter right now. The hospital, there's an issue with his insurance. They won't start the specialized craniotomy without a deposit. It's out of network, some bureaucratic nightmare. They need cash, Morgan, immediately. How much? I asked, walking toward my closet, phone pressed to my ear. $31,000? I froze. My hand, reaching for a suitcase, stopped in midair. 31,000? I repeated. Mom, hospitals don't demand $30,000 cash before saving a life. That's illegal. EMTA laws require them to stabilize. Don't you dare quote laws at me while your brother is dying. This time, it was my father's voice. He had snatched the phone. His tone wasn't panicked. It was furious. The surgeon is a specialist. He's standing right here. We need to wire the money to the administration account now, or they walk away. Do you want Tyler to die? Is your money more important than his life? I paused. The adrenaline was still pumping, but a cold, logical chill was beginning to seep in. $31,000. It was such a specific number. Not 30, not 35. 31. And the urgency. I work as a CFO. I deal with contracts, liabilities, and high-stakes negotiations daily. Something about the cadence of my father's voice didn't match the chaos of a trauma center. It sounded rehearsed. It sounded like a demand, not a plea. Let me speak to a doctor, I said, my voice steadying. Put the administrator on the phone. I'll give them my credit card information directly. Silence on the other end. Then shuffling. They can't take cards over the phone for this amount, my dad growled. Privacy laws. You have to wire it to my account, and I'll pay them. Morgan, stop stalling. Every second you waste is brain damage for your brother. My stomach turned, not from fear anymore, but from a sickening familiarity. This was the same tone he used when he wanted me to co-sign a loan, the same tone he used when Tyler needed tuition that mysteriously vanished. I don't have $31,000 sitting in my checking account at 3 a.m., Dad, I said. You have savings. You have that investment portfolio. Liquidate it. Transfer it. That takes days, I countered. Figure it out, my mother screamed from the background. He's your brother. How can you be so selfish? You're sitting there in your fancy apartment while he's bleeding out. I looked around my fancy apartment. It was a 2-bedroom rental I worked 60 hours a week to afford. I drove a 6-year-old sedan. I hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years. Mom, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, if he's really dying, call 911. Call the police if the hospital is refusing care. I'm not wiring you $30,000 based on a phone call. "You heartless bitch," my father spat. The venom in his voice was palpable. "If he dies tonight, his blood is on your hands. Don't you ever come home. Don't you dare show your face at the funeral." Tears pricked my eyes, hot and stinging, but I refused to let them fall. "If you need money that badly," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and grief, "sell Brittany's designer bags. Or better yet, sell the car I paid for." I didn't wait for a response. I pulled the phone away from my ear and pressed the red button. Then, shaking uncontrollably, I turned the phone off completely. The silence of the apartment rushed back in, but inside my head, it was screaming. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the blank screen. Had I just killed my brother? Or had I just saved myself? I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I lay back down, staring at the shadows dancing on the ceiling, the silence of the room amplifying the guilt gnawing at my gut. My father's words echoed in a loop. Heartless, selfish, blood on your hands. But as the initial shock faded, the memories flooded in. The receipts, the history, the pattern that had defined my entire adult life. They called me the responsible one. That was the family code word for the ATM. It started when I was 22. I was fresh out of college, working 3 jobs. Barista by day, tutor by evening, freelance bookkeeper by night. I ate instant noodles so I could save every penny. Why? Because Tyler, the golden child, had gotten into a private university, and my parents didn't have the liquidity for his tuition. "It's an investment in the family, Morgan," my dad had said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "When Tyler graduates, he'll take care of us all." I paid $28,000 that year. I handed over my entire savings. 6 months later, Tyler dropped out. He said the academic pressure was affecting his mental health. The reality, he spent the tuition money on rushing a fraternity and partying. My $28,000 evaporated into keg stands and ski trips. Did he apologize? Did my parents pay me back? No. They told me I should be proud that I helped him find himself. But the real kicker, the one that still burned like acid in my throat, happened last year. My younger sister, Brittany, the baby, the princess. She decided she was going to be an influencer. She needed a brand image. "She can't show up to events in a Honda, Morgan," my mother had argued over Sunday dinner. "Appearance is everything in her industry." They wore me down, day after day of guilt trips, of silence, of "we fed you and clothed you." Finally, I broke. I co-signed. Not for a practical car, not for a reliable sedan like mine, for a Porsche Macan. I remember standing in the dealership, looking at my reflection in the polished black paint of that SUV. It cost more than I made in a year. Brittany was squealing, snapping selfies with the keys, not even looking at me. "You're the best big sis ever," she had chirped, already posting the photo to Instagram with the caption, #selfmade, #Porsche life. I drove home that day in my rattling Honda Civic, the check engine light flickering on the dashboard. I was the CFO of a logistics firm, managing millions of dollars in assets, yet I was driving a beater while my unemployed 23-year-old sister drove a luxury performance vehicle that I was legally responsible for. And they still wanted more. Every month there was a crisis. The water heater, the property tax, Brittany's business expenses. It was a slow bleed, 1,000 paper cuts draining my financial lifeblood. I turned over in bed, clutching the pillow. Tonight felt different, though. $31,000 wasn't a water heater. It was a massive, jagged number. Why $31,000? Why 3 a.m.? And why did my father sound so angry rather than terrified? The guilt began to morph into something else, something harder. Call it intuition, call it the cynical heart of an auditor, but the math didn't add up. I realized then that I wasn't crying because I was worried about Tyler. I was crying because I was exhausted. I was 34 years old, and I felt like I was 80. I had spent my entire youth buying their love, purchasing my seat at the dinner table, and tonight, the price of admission had just gone up to $31,000. I squeezed my eyes shut. Please let me be wrong. I prayed to a God I wasn't sure was listening. Please let him be safe, but please don't let me be a fool again. I didn't know it then, lying in the dark, but that prayer was about to be answered in the most brutal way possible. The sun was about to rise on the worst day of my life, but also the first day of my freedom. The morning sun hit my face, but it didn't bring warmth. It brought the harsh reality of the fallout. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. My hand hovered over it for a second, trembling. I knew what was waiting for me. I braced myself and held the power button. The screen lit up, and the device immediately began to spasm. It buzzed and pinged relentlessly, a machine gun of notifications. 61 missed calls, 147 text messages, dozens of Instagram DMs. My stomach dropped to the floor. I opened the text thread first. Aunt Linda, how could you? He's your brother. Cousin Marcus, I always knew you were stuck up, but letting family die over money? You're sick. You killed him. Don't bother coming to the hospital. You're dead to us. The room spun. I felt like I was going to throw up. Had Tyler actually died? Was I wrong? Was I the monster they said I was? Then a notification from TikTok popped up. It was being shared by everyone I knew. Brittany just tagged you in a video. The truth about my sister. My fingers felt numb as I tapped the notification. The video opened. There was Brittany. She was sitting in the driver's seat of the Porsche I paid for. The leather interior was pristine, the logo gleaming on the steering wheel behind her manicured hands. She was crying. Perfect, tragic tears rolling down her flawless makeup. Hey guys, she choked out, looking directly into the camera. I don't usually do this, but I'm just so heartbroken. My brother, Tyler, he's fighting for his life right now. She wiped a tear, sniffing delicately. And my sister, my own sister, Morgan, she has millions, you guys. She's this big corporate CFO. And when my parents called her begging for help to save his life, she laughed. She literally told them to let him die because she wanted to buy a new handbag or something. I gasped loud enough to hear it in the empty room. Laughed? Handbag? It just hurts so much, Brittany continued, her voice breaking theatrically, to know that money changes people like that. We're going to lose him because she's too greedy to care. Please pray for Tyler. And pray for Morgan's soul, because she's going to need it. The video had 1.2 million views. It had been posted 3 hours ago. I scrolled down to the comments. It was a firing squad. Dox her. Let's find where she works. Mama Bear 88. What a monster. Karma will get her. Justice for Tyler. Imagine driving a Porsche while your brother dies. Oh wait, the sister is the rich one? Disgusting. I dropped the phone on the bed as if it were burning hot. I felt naked, exposed. The narrative had been spun so fast, so viciously, that the truth didn't matter anymore. To the world, I was the villain. I was the rich, heartless sister hoarding her wealth while her saintly brother perished. The isolation was suffocating. I sat there, hugging my knees to my chest, rocking back and forth. I thought about calling Sarah, my best friend, but shame held me back. What if she believed them? What if the video was so convincing that even the people who knew me started to doubt? My career. Oh God, my career. I was the CFO of a logistics firm. Reputation was everything. If this got back to the board, if my CEO saw this... My phone rang again. I stared at it. An unknown number. Panic seized my throat. Was it a reporter? An angry mob member? My dad calling to scream some more? I let it ring. It stopped. Then, immediately, it rang again. Same number. Something inside me shifted. A tiny spark of that CFO mode, the part of me that dealt with crisis management, flickered to life. Hiding wouldn't solve this. If Tyler was dead, I needed to know. I needed to face it. I picked up the phone. "This is Morgan," I said, my voice sounding hollow and dead. "Ms. Morgan Hayes?" A deep, authoritative voice on the other end. Not a family member. Not a reporter. "Yes. This is Officer Ramirez with the Nevada Highway Patrol. I'm calling regarding a Tyler Hayes. Are you his sister?" My heart stopped. This was it. The death notification. "Yes," I whispered, tears finally spilling over. Is he gone?" There was a pause on the other line, a confused pause. "Gone? No, ma'am. He's sitting right here in holding cell number 4. I'm calling because he listed you as his emergency contact for bail." The world tilted on its axis. "Holding cell?" I repeated, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "But the hospital? The brain surgery?" The concrete stairs. "Ma'am, I don't know what you've been told," Officer Ramirez said, his tone shifting from professional to slightly suspicious. "But your brother was arrested at 2:15 a.m. last night. There was no fall, no stairs." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "Please, officer, tell me exactly what happened." He was driving a rental vehicle, a 2024 Camaro. He struck a parked car outside the High Roller Underground Casino. When we arrived on the scene, he was intoxicated and belligerent. We found chips from the illegal game in his possession. I closed my eyes, the pieces of the puzzle slamming together with violent force. "Was he injured?" I asked, my voice trembling with a new kind of emotion, rage. "Minor bruising from the airbag deployment." He refused medical attention on the scene. "He's fine, Miss Hayes, but he is in significant trouble. DUI, reckless endangerment, and there's the matter of the debt." The debt? Based on the text messages on his confiscated phone, which is evidence now, he owes the people running that game a significant amount. They were threatening him before the crash. "How much?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. $31,000, Ramirez confirmed, plus bail set at $5,000. The silence that stretched between us was heavy. $31,000. Not a medical emergency, a gambling debt. Not a life-saving surgery, a mob payoff. Not a tragedy, a crime. My parents knew. They had to know. They called me 7 minutes after the arrest. They didn't call to tell me my brother was a criminal. They called to spin a fairy tale about a tragic accident to guilt me into wiring cash that would wash his hands clean. They were willing to let me believe my brother was dying. They were willing to let me carry the guilt of his death for the rest of my life, just to get the money. And Brittany, she knew too. She was filming that TikTok while Tyler sat in a drunk tank, using his tragedy to boost her engagement and destroy my reputation. Something inside me broke, but it wasn't the kind of break that leaves you in pieces. It was the kind of break that happens to a glow stick, a sharp snap that suddenly floods the darkness with light. I stopped crying. I wiped the tears from my cheeks with the back of my hand. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I walked over to the mirror. My eyes were red, my hair messy, but the woman staring back at me wasn't the victim anymore. She was the CFO. She was the auditor, and she had just found a massive discrepancy in the books. "Officer Ramirez," I said, my voice steady, sharp, and professional. "Thank you for this information. Do not release him. Do not accept bail from anyone until I get there. I am coming down to the station." "Ma'am, you don't have to." "I'm coming," I cut him off, "and I'm bringing my lawyer." I hung up. I looked at the notifications still piling up on my phone. The hate comments, the family insults, the gaslighting. "You want a villain?" I thought, grabbing my blazer from the closet. "Fine. I'll show you what happens when you mess with the person who holds the receipts." I packed a bag. I didn't pack tissues. I packed my laptop, a voice recorder, and a file folder labeled Family Assets. The drive to the station was 3 hours. I didn't listen to music. I drove in silence, letting the anger harden into a weapon. They thought I was an ATM. They thought I was a doormat. They were about to find out that I was the only thing standing between them and total ruin, and I was stepping out of the way. The police station smelled like stale coffee and industrial cleaner. It was a smell devoid of hope, stark and utilitarian. I walked in, my heels clicking sharply against the linoleum floor. I was wearing my boardroom armor, a tailored navy suit, sharp eyeliner, and an expression that could freeze water. I saw them immediately in the waiting area. My mother, Linda, was pacing, wringing a tissue in her hands. My father, Frank, was arguing with the desk sergeant, his face a mottled red. Brittany was sitting in a plastic chair, scrolling on her phone, looking bored, her expensive sunglasses pushed up on her head. They looked up as I approached. For a split second, I saw a flicker of hope in my mother's eyes. She thought I was there with the checkbook. She thought the Bank of Morgan had opened for business. "Morgan!" Mom rushed toward me, arms outstretched. "Oh, thank God! Did you bring the money? Is it wired? We have to get him out before—" I sidestepped her hug. The movement was small, but it was a chasm. She froze, confusion clouding her face. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice flat. He's in the back," Dad said, stepping away from the desk. He looked tired, but there was that familiar, arrogant set to his jaw. "Look, we can discuss your attitude later. Right now, we need the $31,000 for the medical transfer." I stared at him. I stared right into his eyes, looking for a shred of shame. There was none. He was doubling down on the lie, standing right there in a police station lobby. "The medical transfer," I repeated slowly. "Is that what they call bail and bookie debts these days?" The color drained from my mother's face. Dad's eyes narrowed. "I spoke to Officer Ramirez," I said, raising my voice just enough so the desk sergeant could hear. "I know about the DUI. I know about the rental car. I know about the gambling debt." "Keep your voice down," Dad hissed, grabbing my arm. I ripped my arm away. "Don't touch me." "You don't understand," Mom pleaded, switching tactics instantly from lie to victimhood. "He made a mistake, Morgan, just one mistake. But those men, the ones he owes, they're dangerous. If we don't pay them, they'll kill him. We had to tell you it was surgery because we knew you wouldn't help otherwise. You're so judgmental." "I'm judgmental?" I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "You told me he was dying of a brain hemorrhage. You let me believe I killed him by saying no. You let Brittany post that video destroying my reputation." I turned to Brittany. She didn't look up from her phone. She was probably deleting comments that exposed the truth, or maybe blocking keywords. "Take it down," I said to her. Brittany rolled her eyes. "It's already viral, Morgan. I can't just delete it. It's my content." "It's libel," I said, "and it's a lie." "It's my truth," she snapped back. I turned back to my parents. "I'm not paying it." "What?" Dad stepped closer, looming over me. "You have to. He's your brother. If you don't pay, he goes to prison. He'll be ruined." He drove drunk, Dad. He could have killed someone. He needs to be in jail. You ungrateful little brat, Dad snarled. After everything we did for you, we raised you, we sacrificed for you. And you sit on your pile of money and watch your family suffer? You owe us. I reached into my pocket and hit stop on the voice recorder app running on my phone. I owe you nothing, I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. I paid for his college. I paid for her car. I paid for your mortgage when Dad retired early. I'm done. If you walk out that door, Mom screamed, don't you ever come back. We will disown you. You can't disown me, Mom, I said, turning to leave. I resigned. I walked toward the exit, ignoring their screams. But as I pushed open the heavy glass doors, a thought struck me, a nagging accountant's itch. My dad had mentioned my investment portfolio on the phone last night. I never told him about that portfolio. I opened it 6 months ago with a new broker. And Brittany's car? The Porsche. I had stopped paying the insurance on it 2 months ago to force her to take responsibility, but she was still driving it. Something was wrong, something deeper than just this incident. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and pulled out my laptop. I wasn't going home yet. I needed to see just how deep the rot went. I found a coffee shop with Wi-Fi about a mile from the police station. I bought a black coffee, sat in the corner, and opened my laptop. My hands were steady now. This was my domain. Numbers don't lie. People do, but numbers always tell the truth if you know where to look. I logged into my credit monitoring service first. Alert. Suspicious activity detected. My breath hitched. I clicked on the details. There were 5 credit cards listed that I didn't recognize. A Platinum Amex, a Chase Sapphire, 2 Discover cards, and a store card for Neiman Marcus. Opened 18 months ago, opened 14 months ago, opened 6 months ago. The billing address for all of them? My parents' house in North Las Vegas. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. Identity theft. My own parents had stolen my identity. I clicked on the transaction history for the Amex. Cabo San Lucas Resort, $4,200. Porsche Service Center, $1,800. DraftKings Deposit, $500. DraftKings Deposit, $500. DraftKings Deposit, $1,000. I scrolled, page after page. They were living a life of luxury on my credit score. The family vacations they claimed Dad paid for with his pension? Me. Brittany's designer wardrobe? Me. Tyler's gambling habit? Me. I checked the total utilization. $92,000. They had racked up nearly $100,000 in debt in my name. I sat back feeling physically ill. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was criminal. They weren't just bad parents. They were felons. They had looked me in the eye at Thanksgiving, eaten the turkey I bought, all while knowing they were systematically destroying my financial future. And then I found the smoking gun. A document in the secured message center of my bank, a loan application for a second mortgage on their house, co-signed by Morgan Hayes. I downloaded the PDF. I zoomed in on the signature line. It was a clumsy forgery. It looked like my signature, but the loop on the Y was wrong. My dad's handwriting. They had tried to refinance their house using my credit because theirs was shot. And the status of the loan? Denied due to excessive debt-to-income ratio. That explained the desperation. That explained why they needed cash now for Tyler. They had tapped out all the stolen credit cards. They had maxed out the fraudulent loans. The well was dry, and the loan sharks were circling. I wasn't just a daughter to them. I was a host to them, and they were the parasites, and they had almost killed the host. Rage, hot and white, flooded my veins. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. Not my parents, not Tyler. Law offices of Davis and Associates, a receptionist answered. Hi, this is Morgan Hayes. I need to speak to Mr. Davis immediately. It's an emergency regarding fraud, identity theft, and, I took a deep breath, and potential extortion. One moment, Miss Hayes. As I waited on hold, I looked out the window at the parking lot. A beat-up pickup truck drove by. I thought about the $31,000. They wanted me to pay for Tyler's mistake, while they owed me $92,000. Morgan, it was Alan Davis, my corporate attorney. What's going on? Alan, I said, my voice eerily calm. I need you to prepare a package. I need a full forensic accounting of my accounts, and I need you to draft police reports for identity theft. 5 counts. Identity theft? Who is the suspect? My mother and father, I said. There was a long silence on the line. Morgan, are you sure? Once we file this, there's no going back. This is prison time. Federal charges. I know, I said, but before we file, I need to have one last family dinner. Why? Because I need them to admit it, I said. I have the recording of the blackmail for the bail money, but I need them to admit to the fraud. I need it airtight. Morgan, that's dangerous. Don't confront them alone. I won't be alone, I said, watching a police cruiser drive past the coffee shop window. I'm setting a trap. I waited 2 hours before calling them back. I needed them to be sweating. I needed them desperate. I sat in my car, rehearsing the script in my head. I had to sound broken. I had to sound like the Morgan they knew, the pushover, the pleaser, the one who always fixed it. I dialed my dad's number. What? He answered, aggressive but shaky. Dad, I said, forcing a wobble into my voice. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have walked out. Damn right you shouldn't have, he snapped, but I could hear the relief flooding his voice. Where are you? Did you come to your senses? I did, I lied. I was just so shocked about the gambling. But I've been sitting here thinking, family is family, right? I can't let Tyler go to jail, not for something like this. Now you're talking sense, Dad said, his tone shifting instantly to condescending approval. I knew you'd do the right thing, Morgan. You're a good girl deep down. I suppressed the urge to vomit. I can get the $31,000. I can wire it to the lawyer or whoever needs it. But Dad, it's a lot of money. It's going to drain my liquidity. So, you'll make more. You have that fancy job. I know, but I need security. If I pay this, I need to know we're all on the same page about the finances. I want to come over for dinner tonight, all of us, you, Mom, Brittany, and we need to get Tyler out on bail so he can be there too. We can't get him out without the money, Morgan. I'll pay the $5,000 bail now, I said. I'll bring the check for the rest tonight. But we have to sign an agreement, a family loan agreement, just for my records, for tax purposes. Fine, fine, he dismissed it quickly. He didn't care what he signed. He just wanted the cash. Just get here. Mom's making pot roast. Pot roast. The meal of reconciliation. How fitting. Okay, I said. I'll see you at 7. I hung up and immediately called Alan back. They took the bait, I said. They think I'm bringing a check. I have the papers ready, Alan said, and I've contacted the Las Vegas PD Fraud Division. Detective Miller is interested, especially given the amount. Good. Have them on standby. I'll text you the signal. Morgan, be careful. I will. I spent the next few hours preparing. I went to a print shop and printed out the credit card statements, the forged loan application, and the timeline of transactions. I put them in a crisp manila folder. I didn't bring a check for $31,000. I brought a single dollar bill. It was symbolic. That was all they were ever getting from me again. I stopped at a gas station and checked my makeup in the rearview mirror. I applied a fresh coat of lipstick. I looked sharp, dangerous. I wasn't the daughter coming home for forgiveness. I was the executioner coming to read the sentence. As I pulled onto their street, a street lined with nice suburban houses that hid ugly secrets, I saw the driveway. Brittany's Porsche was there, gleaming under the streetlights. My parents' SUV was there, and a rental car. Tyler must be out. I parked my 6-year-old sedan on the street. I took a deep breath, grabbed the manila folder, and walked up the driveway. The house looked warm and inviting from the outside. Golden light spilled from the windows. It looked like the American dream. Inside, it was a crime scene. They just didn't know it yet. I rang the doorbell. The door swung open, and there was Mom. She was wearing an apron, a smile plastered on her face that didn't reach her eyes. "Morgan, come in, come in. You're just in time." She hugged me. It felt like being hugged by a constrictor snake. I stiffened but didn't pull away. Not yet. "Hi, Mom." I walked into the dining room. The table was set with the good china, the wedding china. Candles were lit. It was a grotesque parody of a happy family dinner. Dad was sitting at the head of the table, pouring wine. Tyler was slouching in his chair, looking haggard but clean. He was wearing a fresh shirt, his hair slicked back. He didn't look like someone who had just spent 12 hours in a holding cell. He looked like a bored prince waiting for his allowance. And Brittany was on her phone, as usual. "Put the phone away, Britt," Dad said jovially. "Your sister is here, the hero of the hour." Brittany looked up, eyes narrowing. Did she bring the money? "Hello to you too, Brittany," I said, taking my seat. I placed the manila folder on the table next to my plate, face down. "So," Tyler said, not even looking at me, "thanks for the bail, I guess. That cell was disgusting." "You're welcome," I said quietly. "Did you learn anything?" Tyler scoffed. "Yeah, I learned not to rent a Chevy. Handles like crap. If I had the Porsche, I wouldn't have crashed." "You wouldn't be driving the Porsche," Brittany snapped. "It's mine." "Actually," I interjected, my voice silky smooth, "it's mine. My name is on the title." "Whatever," Brittany waved a hand, her bracelets jingling. "Oh my God, you guys, I just hit 1.5 million views on the video. My engagement is insane. Lamborghini sent me a DM. They want a collab. Can you imagine me in a Lambo?" She was talking about upgrading to a Lamborghini while her brother was facing felony charges, and her parents were about to extort their eldest daughter. The delusion was breathtaking. "Let's eat first," Mom said, bringing out the roast. "We can talk business after." "No," Dad said, his eyes fixed on the folder next to me. "Let's settle this now. Morgan, did you bring the check?" "I did, but like I said, we need to clarify some things first." "Clarify what?" Dad asked, his patience thinning. "Just hand it over. The guys, Tyler's creditors, they need it by midnight." "I want to talk about the other debts," I said. The room went quiet. The clinking of silverware stopped. "What other debts?" Mom asked, her voice rising an octave. I opened the folder. I pulled out the first sheet of paper, the Amex statement showing the trip to Cabo. "This one," I said, sliding it across the table to Dad. He looked down. His face didn't change color yet. He just frowned. "What is this?" "That's the credit card bill for your anniversary trip to Mexico," I said. "The one you told me you paid for with your pension bonus. So, why do you have my bill?" "Because it's not your bill, Dad," I said, leaning forward. "It's in my name. You opened it using my social security number." Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Brittany stopped chewing. Tyler looked up from his plate. "I don't know what you're talking about," Dad said, tossing the paper back. "A clerical error?" I pulled out the next sheet, the Porsche service invoice. "Is this an error too? $1,800 for brake calipers on the Macan, charged to a Chase Sapphire card in my name." "Morgan, stop it," Mom said, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this? We're trying to have a nice dinner. And this," I pulled out the DraftKings deposits, "Tyler's gambling, funded by a Discover card in my name." I stood up. I wasn't the scared daughter anymore. I was the prosecutor. "You stole my identity," I said, my voice rising. "You opened 5 credit cards. You racked up $92,000 in debt. And you tried to mortgage this house in my name." "We did what we had to do." Dad slammed his fist on the table. The wine glasses shook. "We needed the money. We're your parents. Everything you have is because of us. You owe us." "I don't owe you my credit score," I yelled back. "I don't owe you my future. That is a felony, Dad. Federal fraud." "Who are you going to tell?" Tyler sneered. "The cops? You won't. You're too scared of what people will think." "Yeah," Brittany chimed in, holding up her phone. "You want me to make another video? Sister Sue's own parents? You'll be hated, Morgan. Nobody likes a snitch." "Is that a threat?" I asked Brittany. "It's a promise," she smirked. "Now give Dad the check for $31,000 so we can finish dinner. This roast is getting cold." I looked at them. The greed, the entitlement, the absolute lack of morality. They weren't just asking for money, they were holding my life hostage. "So, just to be clear," I said, looking at Dad, "you admit you opened the cards? You admit you need this $31,000 to pay off Tyler's gambling debt?" "Yes, I admit it," Dad yelled. "I did what I had to do to protect this family. Now give me the damn money." "Okay," I said. I reached into my pocket. "I have something for you." I pulled out my phone. The screen was glowing red. Recording. "And I have something else," I said, looking toward the front door. I raised my voice. "Now!" The front door burst open. The front door didn't just open, it exploded inward with the force of a battering ram. The wood splintered near the lock, a sharp crack that sounded like a gunshot in the tense silence of the dining room. "Police! Nobody move! Hands where I can see them!" The command roared through the hallway, bouncing off the framed family photos of a happy family that never really existed. My father, Frank, dropped his wine glass. It shattered against the hardwood floor, a splash of crimson Merlot staining the expensive rug like fresh blood. He scrambled out of his chair, his face a mask of purple rage and confusion. "What is the meaning of this?" he bellowed, trying to summon the authority he used to wield as a patrol officer years ago. "I am a retired officer of the law. You can't bust into my house." "Sit down, Frank." Detective Miller stepped into the light of the chandelier, his badge gleaming on his belt. Behind him, 4 uniformed officers fanned out, their hands resting on their holsters. The room suddenly felt very small and very crowded. "Miller?" Dad blinked, recognizing him. "Jim, what the hell are you doing? My daughter, she called you? She's having a breakdown. She's making up lies because we asked her for a loan." Detective Miller didn't smile. He didn't offer a handshake. He looked at my father with a mixture of pity and professional disgust. "I'm not here for a domestic dispute, Frank," Miller said, his voice calm and deadly serious. "I'm here to execute a warrant." "A warrant?" Mom shrieked, clutching her pearls. "For what? We haven't done anything." I stayed seated. I picked up my wine glass, took a slow sip, and watched. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird, but my hands were steady. This was the moment, the pivot point. "For Morgan!" Tyler yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Arrest her! She's the one causing trouble. She's refusing to help her family." I looked at Tyler. He looked so small now. The arrogance was evaporating, replaced by the primal fear of a trapped animal. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the noise, "Detective Miller, did you get the email I sent from the car?" "I did, Miss Hayes." Miller nodded at me. "And we're recording now." I picked up my phone, which was still recording on the table. I tapped the screen and hit playback. My father's voice, clear and undeniable, filled the room. "Yes." I admit it. I did what I had to do to protect this family. Now give me the damn money. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Dad stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. That was out of context, he stammered. I was placating her. Save it for the judge, Frank, Miller snapped. He signaled to the officers. Frank Hayes, Linda Hayes, you are under arrest. No, Mom screamed, backing into the china cabinet. The plates rattled ominously. You can't do this. I'm a mother. We were just trying to survive. Morgan, tell them to stop. She looked at me, her eyes wide and wet. For the first time in my life, she wasn't looking at me as a resource or a servant. She was looking at me as her only hope. And I felt nothing. No guilt. No urge to fix it. Just a profound sense of exhaustion lifting off my shoulders. I can't tell them to stop, Mom, I said softly, because I'm the one who asked them to start. I want to take a second here to say this to anyone watching who has been bullied, gaslit, or used by the people who were supposed to protect you. It takes an incredible amount of strength to sit in a room and watch your world burn down so you can build a new one. If you are still watching, if you are standing with me in this dining room right now, please hit that like button and type the number 1 in the comments. Let me know I'm not alone in this fight. Your support fuels me more than you know. The officers moved in. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut, click, 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 was the loudest sound in the world. Get your hands off me, Dad struggled, but he was an old man now, soft from years of living off my money. The young officer spun him around effortlessly. Tyler tried to bolt. He actually tried to run towards the back door. Don't even think about it, son. Another officer stepped in his path. You're coming too. Violation of bail conditions. And we found the rest of the chips in your pocket when you were booked earlier. Morgan! Tyler screamed as they cuffed him. You bitch! You ruined everything! Who's going to pay the guys? They're going to kill me in jail. You're sentencing me to death. You sentenced yourself, Tyler, I said, standing up finally, when you decided my life was worth less than your gambling habit. Brittany was the only one not in cuffs yet. She was pressed against the wall, her phone clutched to her chest, live streaming. She was actually live streaming her parents being arrested. Guys, oh my God, the police are literally abusing my dad right now. She whispered frantically into the camera. This is police brutality. My sister swatted us. Detective Miller walked over to her and plucked the phone out of her hand. Hey, that's my property, she shrieked. Actually, it's evidence, Miller said, sliding it into an evidence bag. And seeing as this phone was paid for by a credit card opened fraudulently in your sister's name, I doubt it's legally yours. The room was a chaos of shouting, crying, and the static of police radios. But in the center of the storm, I stood perfectly still. The golden child, the princess, and the patriarch were all in chains. The hierarchy of the Hayes family had just been dismantled in under 3 minutes. They were led out to the front yard, a parade of shame under the harsh glare of the flashing red and blue lights. Neighbors were coming out onto their porches. Mrs. Higgins from next door, who always looked down her nose at me because I was single and worked too much, was standing there in her bathroom, mouth agape. I followed them out. The night air was cool, a stark contrast to the stifling heat of the dining room. Detective Miller stopped my parents near the squad car. He turned to me. Miss Hayes, for the record, I need to verify the charges you are pressing. This was it. The moment of no return. My father looked at me. His face was flushed red with anger. Morgan, don't be stupid. You drop this now and we can fix it. You file these charges and you have no parents. You hear me? You'll be an orphan. I looked at him. I looked at the man who taught me to ride a bike and then taught me that my only value was my credit score. "Read them," I said to Miller. Miller pulled out his notepad. "Frank and Linda Hayes, you are being charged with 5 counts of identity theft, 3 counts of credit card fraud, 1 count of attempted mortgage fraud, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny regarding the extortion attempt of $31,000 tonight." My father blinked. Extortion? It was a family loan. Demanding money under false pretenses, claiming a medical emergency that didn't exist, while threatening consequences? That's extortion, Frank. You know the law. Then Miller delivered the final blow. And given the total amount defrauded exceeds $50,000, and the victim is a family member you held a position of trust over, the district attorney is adding an enhancement. These are Class B felonies. Mandatory minimums apply. You're looking at 10 to 15 years in state prison. That was the moment. That was the specific second when the title of this story came true. My father didn't just look shocked. The blood physically drained from his face so fast it looked like a special effect. His skin turned a sickly, waxen gray. His knees actually buckled, and the officer behind him had to hold him up. 15 years. He was 64. That wasn't a sentence. That was a coffin. My mother let out a sound I will never forget. A low, keen wail that sounded like an animal caught in a trap. Her legs gave out completely, and she slumped against the side of the police cruiser, sliding down until she hit the pavement. "No," she moaned, rocking back and forth. "No, no, my house, my reputation, my life." "You should have thought about that before you signed my name," I said. My voice was devoid of pity. It was the voice of the auditor closing the books on a bankrupt company. Tyler was in the back of another cruiser, slamming his head against the window, screaming silently behind the glass. He knew what awaited him. Without my money, without my protection, he was just fresh meat in the county jail with a $31,000 bounty on his head. "Morgan," Dad croaked, his voice a husk of its former boom. "Please, I'm your father. I'm old. I can't go to prison. I'll die in there." I walked up to him. I looked him dead in the eye. "You told me that if Tyler died tonight, his blood was on my hands," I whispered. "Well, Dad, if you die in prison, that's on yours." I turned my back on him. "Take them away," I said to Miller. The doors slammed shut. The engines revved. As the cars pulled away, taking the architects of my misery with them, I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I felt a strange, vibrating numbness. It was the feeling of a limb waking up after being asleep for years, painful, prickly, but undeniably alive. But the night wasn't over. There was one more loose end, one more symbol of my oppression that needed to be dealt with. I turned to look at the driveway. Brittany was standing there, shivering in the cool air, bereft of her phone and her parents. She looked at me with pure hatred. "You happy now?" she spat. "You destroyed everything. Where am I supposed to sleep? The police said they're sealing the house as a crime scene because of the fraud investigation." "I don't know, Brittany," I said. "Maybe you can sleep in your Porsche." Brittany's eyes lit up for a second. Yeah, I'll drive to Garrett's house. Oh, wait," I interrupted, pointing down the street. "I don't think you will." Turning the corner, grand and loud, was a flatbed tow truck. Its yellow lights flashed in rhythm with the retreating police sirens. The tow truck backed into the driveway with a mechanical beep, beep, beep that sounded like music to my ears. "What is that?" Brittany screamed. "What are they doing?" The driver, a burly man named Dave, whom I had hired 3 hours ago, hopped out. He held a clipboard. Pickup order for a 2024 Porsche Macan, Dave grunted. Miss Morgan Hayes. That's me, I said, raising my hand. No, Brittany threw herself in front of the car. She literally hugged the hood of the SUV. You can't take it. It's mine. I'm an influencer. This car is my brand. It's my car, Brittany, I said, walking over to Dave and signing the release form. I stopped the payments 2 months ago, but since I'm the legal owner, I'm voluntarily surrendering it to the bank to avoid a repo hit on my credit. Well, what's left of my credit. You can't do this, Brittany wailed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her spray tan. I have a collab with Revolve next week. How am I supposed to get there? An Uber? Like a peasant? You're young, I said, leaning against the doorframe of my rusty sedan. You have strong legs. Walk. Dave didn't care about her drama. He hooked the chains onto the axle. The winch whirred to life. Slowly, painfully, the glossy black symbol of my sister's entitlement was dragged up onto the flatbed. Brittany watched it go like she was watching a child being kidnapped. She fell to her knees in the driveway, sobbing. My Porsche, my life, it's all gone. I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't crying for Mom. She wasn't crying for Dad or Tyler. She was crying for a piece of metal and leather. You know, I said, standing over her, you posted that video today saying I was greedy, that I loved money more than family. She looked up, mascara running down her chin. Look around, Brittany. I gestured to the empty driveway, the police tape being put up across the front door of the house. I'm the only one here who isn't in handcuffs. I'm the only one who works for a living. And I'm the only one walking away. I hate you, she whispered. I know, but unlike you, I don't need your love to pay my rent. I walked to my car. My beat-up 6-year-old sedan with the check engine light. I got in and turned the key. It sputtered, then roared to life. It wasn't a Porsche, it wasn't a Lamborghini, but it was mine. I rolled down the window one last time. Good luck with the collaboration, I said. I put the car in gear and drove away. I watched in the rearview mirror as Brittany sat alone in the dark driveway of a sealed house, a princess without a castle, screaming at the taillights of the sister she had tried to destroy. I drove for an hour without a destination. I just needed to put miles between me and that life. I rolled the windows down and let the desert wind whip through my hair. For the first time in 34 years, I didn't owe anyone anything. My phone buzzed. It was Alan, my lawyer. It's done. Preliminary hearings set for Tuesday. Miller says the DA is going for the maximum. Also, I froze your credit files. They can't hurt you anymore. I pulled over to the side of the highway. I looked out at the lights of Las Vegas twinkling in the distance, a city of illusions, of fake promises and high stakes. My family had gambled everything on the idea that I would never break. They bet on my guilt. They bet on my weakness. They went all in. And they lost. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. A single tear rolled down my cheek, but it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of release. The toxicity, the obligation, the heavy mantle of being the good daughter, it was all gone, dissolved in the red and blue lights of justice. I was broke. My credit score was trashed. My savings were depleted from the bail and the lawyer fees. I had to start over from scratch at 34. But as I looked up at the stars above the desert, I realized something. I was rich. I was richer than I had ever been. Because for the first time, every dollar I made, every breath I took, and every choice I made belonged to me. 5 months later, the smell of freshly ground coffee beans filled my kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I walked out onto the balcony with my mug. Below me, the city of Denver woke up. I wasn't in a rental anymore. I wasn't in a mansion either. I was in a modest, modern condo downtown. It was small, but it was mine. Bought with a clean loan, under my own name, which I had spent months rehabilitating with the help of a credit repair specialist and Detective Miller's detailed police reports. I took a sip of coffee and breathed in the crisp mountain air. My phone buzzed on the patio table. I glanced at it. Incoming call. State Correctional Facility. It was the first Tuesday of the month, Dad's calling day. I stared at the screen. I imagined him in there, the orange jumpsuit, the noise, the loss of dignity. I wondered if he had adjusted. I wondered if he still told the other inmates he was a retired patrol officer, or if he kept his mouth shut to survive. Mom was in a minimum security facility 2 hours away. She sent letters. Long, rambling letters written in shaky cursive, blaming the lawyers, blaming the lodgers, blaming everyone but herself. She sent me a Polaroid of me when I was 6 years old last week, with "I forgive you" written on the back. I burned it in the sink. She forgave me? The delusion was terminal. Tyler? Well, Tyler took a plea deal. 5 years. He was in protective custody because of his debts. I heard through the grapevine that he found religion inside. Or maybe he just found a new group of people to con. I didn't care enough to find out. And Brittany? The last I heard, she was couch surfing with different promoters in Vegas, trying to launch a reality show about her tragic family downfall. She was still trying to monetize the wreckage. I looked at the phone ringing. State Correctional Facility. I reached out my hand. My finger hovered over the red button. In the past, the guilt would have made me answer. The voice in my head saying, "It's your dad, he's suffering," would have won. But that voice was dead. I killed it that night in the driveway. I pressed the volume button on the side of the phone, silencing the ring. I flipped the phone face down. I turned back to the view. The mountains were purple and majestic in the distance. I had a date tonight with a man named David. He was an architect. He paid for his own dinner. He asked me questions about my day. He didn't know about the $31,000 or the Porsche or the arrests. To him, I was just Morgan. Smart, funny, slightly guarded Morgan. I had a promotion at work. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, had seen the news. It was hard to miss. Local family arrested in high-stakes fraud ring. But instead of firing me, he called me into his office. He told me that anyone who could navigate that level of personal financial chaos and still turn in flawless audits was someone he wanted on his executive team. I was now the youngest VP in the company's history. I took another sip of coffee. It tasted like victory. It turns out rock bottom isn't a burial ground. It's a foundation. I had to tear down the rotting structure of my family to build something solid. I picked up my phone again, not to answer the call, but to record this final message for you. To everyone watching this, to everyone who feels like they are drowning under the weight of someone else's expectations, hear me. You are not a bank. You are not a rehabilitation center. You are not a punching bag. No is a complete sentence. Boundaries are not a betrayal. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to light a match and burn the bridge that leads back to the people who hurt you. I'm Morgan Hayes. I lost my family, I lost my credit score, and I lost my past. But I found myself. And let me tell you, she was worth every penny. Thank you for listening to my story. And please click on the next video on the channel. We have so many more stories to tell, and believe me, we are just getting started.